Hello everyone, it's Theme Park Avenue, I'm Eric. Busch Gardens Tampa is my home park, and after Iron Gwazi, many are wondering what will come next to the park. Could they get a B&M Hyper, B&M Wing Coaster, not a roller coaster at all? Well, looking at what other parks have done, heck even other SeaWorld parks, and looking at the competition in Florida that Busch Gardens is trying to face off with, I think the next thing Busch Gardens Tampa should do, ride-wise, is not actually a new ride, but renovating Sand Serpent and making it actually a really fun attraction. Let's talk about this. Before I present the idea for what Busch Gardens Tampa should do next, please subscribe to the channel so you know when new content comes out. Now, even though this video is going to be me talking about Sand Serpent for a pretty long time, it's actually something that I really did want to talk about, and I'll try to make it not seem boring because there's a lot of different ideas I have. And keep in mind, this is not really a prediction, it's more just a suggestion, an idea, a creative solution to the biggest problem with Busch Gardens Tampa's ride lineup, and I would say, besides the lack of flat rides maybe, that is Sand Serpent. Though I'll get to that flat ride thing later. But for those who are unfamiliar, we should probably go into the background of Busch Gardens Tampa's most recent rides and some of their competition. So in 2016, we got Cobra's Curse at Busch Gardens Tampa. This was a mock family spinning coaster that had some very intense moments that can really have the thrill seekers happy, just like most rides at Busch Gardens Tampa. But it is a family ride, and it has theming such as a giant statue of a snake and a very well done queue, which repurposed an old King Tut walkthrough attraction. Then in 2019, we got Tigress. Tigress was a Premier Ride Skyrocket 2 model. This launch coaster goes forwards, does not make it up a hill, goes backwards, and then goes forwards again, completing the layout. This is a very compact roller coaster, and it was kind of the appetizer before the main course, which was to come in 2020. Iron Gwazi, the tallest, fastest, steepest RMC hybrid roller coaster, over 205 feet tall, beating out Steel Vengeance in stats, and having some incredible moments and being one of the best roller coasters in the world. This dinner, of course, would be delayed until 2022, so we had to wait for the main course, but it was quite worth the wait because I think personally Iron Gwazi is the best roller coaster in the world, and it was just fantastic. So now that we have that, I feel Busch Gardens more than competes with Universal's Islands of Adventure in terms of thrilling roller coasters. That said, the more popular park of the two is Islands of Adventure. And of course, then you have Universal Studios Florida and all the Disney parks, and even SeaWorld Orlando, beating out Busch Gardens Tampa. So, what could Busch Gardens Tampa do to kind of get people to want to come to the park? Well, I think the new addition does not need to be a huge, big roller coaster where they spend a lot of money. I think, even though a lot of stuff they're trying to do with SeaWorld now is making big new roller coasters, we have the B&M Surf Coaster coming to SeaWorld Orlando, we have Project Dark Coaster coming to Busch Gardens Williamsburg. I think repurposing Sand Serpent and making it somewhat well themed and just a more enjoyable wild mouse than it is could actually go quite a long way for the park. This would be kind of a combination of elements that have come to a few different parks, so I want to cite those examples. The first is Tumbili and the Jungle Expedition area at King's Dominion. This is an SNS 40 free spin. These rides are compact, relatively cheap, and pretty fun, but definitely not the most unique and exciting attractions out there. I like them, but I think what really had people excited for this was the amount of theming they were putting in. Jungle Expedition, they put a little bit into it because initially we had the awesome volcano, and that's gone. So they're trying to compensate, make a sort of jungle theme, and I think it's kind of gone a long way, because it's turned an SNS 40 free spin into something much more fun than it would have been if it was just a ride with a bunch of concrete surrounding it. Another example I want to cite, this really directly relates to what I want to happen to the actual ride. This is Jolly Rancher Remix at Hersheypark. This used to be Sidewinder, a Vekoma boomerang, similarly, a very compact ride. And people did not love this ride. However, from what I hear with Jolly Rancher Remix, mainly from Hersheypark enthusiasts, check him out by the way, there's a lot of theming they put into the Jolly Rancher Remix, such as lights, color, this cool smell-o-vision sort of thing with a lot of different Jolly Rancher flavors, and they made the ride really colorful, nice, fun, and much more enjoyable, and these kind of things distract from any flaw the ride might have, such as headbanging. And this could be very good for Sand Serpent because Sand Serpent is actually a really painful ride. You get slammed side to side like many Wild Mouse coasters. So being able to distract from that with theming might be quite helpful. Another example, a new ride, and probably the closest example to what I want to happen, Sidewinder Safari at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. This ride, on its own, it's a spinning Wild Mouse. It's fine, it's not anything that special, but what's important is the queue. So they made one of the most awesome entrance signs I've ever seen. Seriously, props to Six Flags on that one. And they put live snakes in the queue, a sort of exhibit. And that seems like such a fun, awesome idea. And I'm really happy they went with that, and it's pretty cool. So overall, we have elements of making the roller coaster more fun and enjoyable, adding theming to the queue, and the other thing I want to add is just what I think they should do overall for the ride. So my proposition for Sand Serpent would be build a warehouse around it so it's an indoor Wild Mouse. And similar to Dark Knight Coaster, have tons of theming. I think the best comparison would be Laff Trakk at Hersheypark. I think that's how they should kind of theme it. Have tons of glowing snakes or other things that they keep that Sand Serpent theme and have a sort of desert idea going around it. And for the facade of the warehouse, I think it should have that Pantopia feel, but also maybe have like a snake coiling around it. I think that could look so awesome and would be quite an interesting figure and bring people more into that area. Granted, Sand Serpent does typically have pretty long lines, but that's more of a capacity issue than people actually wanting to ride it. So I think if they were to do that facade and that really cool Pantopian architecture that is honestly one of the most beautiful things in Busch Gardens Tampa right now, that could add so much because right now, Sand Serpent looks kind of out of place in the area. You have wonderful buildings, and even Scorpion and Falcon's Fury, while their colors do clash a little bit, they look much nicer than Sand Serpent, which is kind of appealing in this paint, and that would not be an issue if the ride was indoors. So that is an idea I have, and regarding the queue, I think they could build it up a little more. I'll get to where they would put space for that later, and I think if they had live snakes in there, that would be really cool. They do that with Cobra's Curse already, so that's another thing I should discuss. On the note of snakes, I don't know if they should keep that snake theme for this ride, because of Cobra's Curse already being a snake-themed ride, and a much better one at that. Similar to how I'm pretty sure they didn't want Tigress and Iron Gwazi to have a tiger theme, which is why they went for the crocodile for Iron Gwazi. So what could they theme Sand Serpent to? One idea I have is lemurs, or any kind of monkey or primate. There are a few reasons for this, and it's going to sound much cooler in a few seconds than it probably does, because a monkey-themed ride, obviously we have Monkey Coaster Tumbili, but I mean, I feel like Sand Serpent could work with this for a few reasons. One, it is adjacent to Twisted Tail Pretzels, which, while very loose in its theme, is technically a pretzel stand themed to lemurs. And honestly, theming a ride around Twisted Tail Pretzels would be the greatest thing ever, because that is an awesome place. I've talked about that before. But I also think having that could be cool. Granted, they would not do live monkeys if they did that. Only live animals would happen if they kept the snake theme. But the theming for the ride could be cool. The facade would look like an overgrown sort of Pantopian building that have that same architecture, but there'd be tons of trees, and you see branches going around, and maybe some statues of monkeys around it. And within the ride, every sharp turn you'd have a monkey, maybe some of them are swinging around, there'd be bananas. It would be a really fun theme. I think it could work super well, and they wouldn't have to have too much story, it would just be an enjoyable one. In the queue, they could do what they do with Iron Gwazi, have facts about monkeys, be very aesthetically pleasing, and it would look like much more than just the cheap carnival attraction that currently Sand Serpent kind of looks like. So that's one idea, and maybe if they want to have a name for it, they could do something fun and silly like Monkey Madness, or to channel that old name Cheetah Chase the ride used to have, maybe they can call it Chimp Chase. Maybe they'll go with a serious name like Call of the Primate, which now that I think about it actually sounds much dumber than Monkey Madness. But nonetheless, I think it could be a really fun theme. And I will say, if they don't want to do that, they could do a ride theme to maybe Desert Spirits. I'm not quite sure what that would entail, but perhaps they do a queue similar to Cobra's Curse that tells a story of some desert monster, and they do that much more mature, darker. That would mean the queue would have to be like indoors and a lot more complex, so I think it's best if they stick with that monkey theme. And because there is not a major monkey ride at Busch Gardens Tampa, and that's a pretty prominent animal in Africa, I think that could work well. One might wonder why I don't want elephants to have a theme. I'm honestly just not sure if we really want to go the pink elephant scene from Dumbo route for this ride. but maybe that would work. But I think the monkey theme is a good idea. So now we must discuss the spacing for this ride. We need to have the warehouse around it, and warehouses are actually very easy to make in terms of the spacing. We have the ride, and the warehouse walls are only about a foot thick or so, so I think they do have the space to enclose the entire ride in a warehouse. Ventilation obviously is something, and actually constructing a warehouse is not the most expensive thing ever. If anything, it's one of the cheaper parts of a process unless it's really large, which this is not, because this ride is actually a very, very compact one. So that is helpful. And I'd say if necessary, they can't do the whole facade in terms of the theming, and they don't want people going back seeing the ugly warehouse. They could move the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer meet and greet. So I am a frequent park goer to Busch Gardens Tampa. I know you walk behind Sand Serpent to go to the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer meet and greet at Christmas. They can always move that maybe to the Gwazi Park area where Christmas Town is. That could work quite well. So I'm just pointing out they would want to do that if they don't have the ability or the money to theme the entire thing. However, I don't think this would be the most expensive endeavor. You're obviously doing the whole building, but with the way they did the Pantopia already, I think they have the funds to do one more building, and the theming within doesn't have to be the most complex thing ever. But I just think that would work well. And I will say one other thing regarding the theming. If they have to do really all out for the queue and put more space, they could always remove Phoenix. I know some like Phoenix, and it would mean they have even less flat rides than they already do, but I don't really like Phoenix that much, so I would be fine with it. And one thing they could do, because Phoenix has a lot of area surrounding it, and by a lot I mean enough, that they could put a new flat ride in, I would love to see something replace Phoenix. Similar to what they did with Mixed, the Jolly Rancher ride right next to Jolly Rancher Remix. They would have another really nice looking flat ride right next to it, and what they could do, I think, is have a Zamperla Frisbee ride, and it would be fairly small, more comparable to, say, Wonder Woman Lasso of Truth, which is at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. I'm not sure what they would theme that one to specifically. It could carry a similar theme, and I think something cool they could do is maybe they put some sort of near-miss elements with this Frisbee. Like if you have some rocks that you basically go up them like a ramp, and there's not a whole lot of space between you and your feet. Enough that anyone can ride, obviously, but it would be kind of cool as a visual, and it would add a lot to the area. So that is the idea that I have. So having a flat ride right there, and making Sand Serpent have a really cool facade with a monkey theme, and within the ride you'd have so many fun, glowing, vibrant theming elements. That would mean people would no longer see the somewhat ugly colors of the ride. They'd be able to be distracted from the somewhat painful parts of the ride. And even though it's not a new attraction, it's relatively cheap to do, and it would attract plenty of people who are excited to see a new themed experience. And if you think people wouldn't be super excited by this, keep in mind, Jolly Rancher Remix has worked like a charm. People are super excited for that one. And this ride could be very similar. Even though it's a wild mouse, seeing the theming elements in promo videos, that would be really helpful, and people would be excited. And I think that is what Busch Gardens Tampa could do next, maybe as a minor thing before the next huge addition, such as a B&M Hyper. But I think that could be something we see in the next few years, maybe 2023, 24, and it would be something that would be so good for the park, add a lot, help for families, make it more enjoyable overall, and I just think this would be an excellent addition for the park. Thank you for watching. I know this ended up being a pretty long video considering it's just talking about a wild mouse, but please comment your ideas on this idea below, and your thoughts on it as well. I'm curious about if other people like this idea. I've just thought about it, and I thought it'd be great, and I've thought about it for a while, and I wanted to get it out there, see what others thought, and who knows, maybe it will happen one day. Subscribe to the channel for more theme park content. I'll see you next time.